So I want to introduce our next presenters, who are three women in their 30s who are all living with lupus. And I was hoping maybe if Chanel, you stay on, and then we can just do questions at the end for everyone. Is that okay? Okay, good. So I'm really excited that we were able to get these three women. So they represent different areas of the country, and I'll just introduce them, and then I'm going to let them go. Kristen Brittain, did I say that right, Kristen? Okay. Kristen is a volunteer and ambassador from the LFA region of Florida. Kelly Wegman is a longtime volunteer and advocate from our own Heartland chapter. And Shruti, I'm going to say it wrong, but Rangnakar, I'm butchering that, I'm so sorry. She recently relocated to Philadelphia, where she's become involved with the Philadelphia Tri-State chapter. So they're each going to share a little bit of their story, and then we're just going to open it up for questions, and you can also unmute your phone at that point, however you want to ask questions, chat, whatever. But before we start, we did our drawing for everybody make sure you mute your phone. We want to do the drawing for our $200 Visa gift card, which we will mail out, and we just randomly pulled a name, and the winner is Nicolette Santiago. So Nicolette, we are going to be mailing you your $200 Visa gift card. So congratulations, and thank you for staying on with us today. We really appreciate that.
Thank
All
you.
right, so I'm going to turn this over, and Kristen's going to go first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Brittain. I'm really happy and excited to be here, especially because I was diagnosed very young, around the age of 12, and started really experiencing more symptoms and in various degrees. And my parents started taking me to different doctors around 8. So it took several years to get diagnosed and misdiagnosed. And throughout that time and where I am now, I just wish the kind of support that's available today was there in place when I was growing up with this disease, because it was rough. And anytime I would, different pediatric rheumatologists and nephrologists and neurologists and cardiologists and all the different ologists ever would always say to my parents, take her to a support group, take her to a support group. And I would go to a support group and everyone would stare at me and think my mom is the patient because I was obviously way too young to be there, which is infuriating, but that's life. So before I go in and talk a little bit about what I've experienced, I just wanted to tell what my health journey has been. So again, I was diagnosed really young, experiencing all different symptoms. Almost every single organ system that can be affected has been affected, from my brain, my kidneys, my heart, my lungs, my skin, and joints has been. And throughout the years, it has definitely changed in terms of activity levels and symptoms and systems that have been attacked by lupus. I also have rheumatoid arthritis to add that into the mix too. So, and I know a lot of people have overlapping disease when it comes to lupus and rheumatoid issues. And who knows what I'll be diagnosed with next. But throughout this entire time has really been a learning curve, especially going from having my mom manage my appointments and medications, and to then being self-sufficient. And I use that in quotes because I don't even know if I'm self-sufficient to this day. I think that's something everyone kind of struggles with. But it's been a journey, and one that I continually learn from through trial and error. And I think that's how I kind of grow the most too. So throughout that time, I graduated high school, I went away to college, and I got my BA. I was about 3 hours away on the other coast of Florida. So I had another rheumatologist that I saw there between my current hometown rheumatologist, which was good because then I got kind of tag teamed. I've gotten my master's, a specialist, and a PhD. And throughout all that time, I think because I had lupus since I was young, I wanted to prove to myself that I can continue to succeed and do different things. And now that I look back at it, I realize I was just battling myself the entire time. And what I wish someone could say to me then was that it's okay to kind of relax and realize that you don't have to do everything, and you don't have to compete with everyone else. Just make sure to take care of your own journey. I also learned to be more open with people. At first, when I went away to college, I was really hesitant to share my diagnosis just because I wanted to be normal for once in my life. And here I was with a group of people who didn't know me prior, someone who was maybe in a wheelchair or had to take different medications or had different situations arrive. Like it was a way to kind of start over. And that worked for a while until it didn't. And I started getting really sick again. And I remember towards my senior year, I lived in an apartment with four of my really close friends. And I started getting very sick prior, so I had to go and start chemotherapy. Actually, I didn't disclose that with my roommates in the extent that I could. I just told them my lupus was being active, and I didn't really share everything. And then I remember I came home one day and all my roommates were on the couch waiting for me. I was like, is this an intervention? And they were like, no, we really want to talk to you and have a family meeting. And they're like, we're finding your hair all over the apartment, and it's not cleanliness that we're concerned about. We want to know if something seriously is going on and you're not telling us. And I realized I missed an opportunity to kind of be open and vulnerable, and I didn't give them the trust that I should, and they were hurt by that, and I realize that now. But I think it was just because I didn't want to be a burden to others. And that's something that I've learned too, that through having lupus and so many different symptoms and things that came up, that my close friends, who actually two of them are on the call right now, and I appreciate their support, because people like that in my family are the ones who have gotten me to the point where I am. Without having those people, I wouldn't have been able to get here. But I realized that those are the ones I need to keep on my side, my tribe, and the people who either I lost friends along the way in relationships, which I'm sure happened to everyone at one point throughout this call, because you're going to have to cancel plans sometimes and not make it and for me, I hate planning ahead for this reason, because I don't want to disappoint others, but it happens. So you realize the ones who understand are the ones worth keeping and holding on to. And if you don't have those people physically in your life, there's so many online resources and communities that you can join to get that help as well. So being more open and vulnerable has been something that I've learned. Also being a self-advocate for myself. And I struggled with that for a long time, and just because I didn't want to speak out or bother other people. But now I realize in my healthcare journey, I have to bother other people, especially with managing multiple physicians and offices. You realize that you have to advocate for yourself. No one else is going to. So getting doctors together, getting appointments together is really important. And even going to a hospital. I had a heart attack on my 25th birthday. I went to work the next day. I didn't go to the doctor or anything. And it wasn't until 3 days later that my mom picked me up from my house and was like, you're going to the doctor. I went to like one of the walk-in ER clinics. They sent me to the emergency room right away. This is when I was in like great shape, and my disease activity was there, but not as prominent as normal, as managing it with Rituxan and methotrexate. And so they saw me, saw that I was having chest pains, did an EKG, saw that my heart was beating out of rhythm, told me I'm a young woman, I'm in good shape, I can't possibly having any heart issues, and sent me home with a anti-anxiety medication. And 3 days later, I went to my cardiologist, and he runs all the extra tests and everything and was like, Kristen, you had a heart attack. And right then and there, I was like, I should have advocated for myself. At that point, I knew something was wrong, and I didn't speak up, because I was like, they're doctors. They should know what they're doing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you really do have to take control of your healthcare journey. And another thing that I've learned is just throughout the entire journey with lupus is that it's okay to grieve and mourn who you were compared to who you want to be. After I got my PhD, I was thinking that I'm going to go into some academic rigorous institution and be a researcher. Now I realize that's not the best role for my health, and I've taken a lesser role in my occupation, but I'm doing what I think I need to do by being involved in other ways and trying to make a difference as much as possible through advocacy and outreach and working with different organizations and helping people to the best of the ability. So that's a little bit about me and my healthcare journey. And it's not something that is linear. It's definitely looks like a roller coaster ride at some point. And I think that's what we need to be able to embrace, that it's not always going to be the same, and that it's okay to wallow for a good half minute, but then you have to get up the next day again and figure out how to get better. So I don't know if you want me to keep going or whatnot, but.
We can go ahead and just turn this over to let Kelly go next, and then Shruti can go last, and then we'll just open it up to questions. There are some people commenting too, if you want to read the comments, Kristen. So we'll go ahead and let Kelly go next.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you all today. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Kelly. I am 34, and I have been on this journey for about 17 years now. I'm going to set a timer to make sure that I don't take up too much of anyone's time, and I don't want to take any of Shruti's time. So I'm going to set a timer right now. Okay. So today I wanted to touch on, we've spoken a lot about our journeys, and everyone has their own journey. And those all look so different, but we all have one thing in common, is that we all are doing trial and errors as we go on our journeys. We all make mistakes, and everyone's journey is going to look different than someone without having lupus. So I thought I would just share a couple of my experiences on different topics, as opposed to sharing my entire lupus journey, because as we know, we could each talk probably all day long about all of the things we have experienced. So one of the first things that I wanted to touch on was my college experience. I was able to get my bachelor's degree, but it was not so simple. I was sick as I was going through college, and that's when we were trying to figure out my diagnosis. So I decided that what was best for me was to actually leave university, move home with my parents, attend a community college, and then once I got back up on my feet after I got my diagnosis, I returned to university where I completed my degree. I did have to go an extra semester, but the point is, I still did it. It was what was best for me. And everyone has to make the decisions that are right for them. There's no shame. There's no regrets. I still did it, and I am just as proud. So I just wanted to touch on that however you have to do it, however it's best for you, make that decision for yourself. The next thing that I wanted to touch on was relationships. Relationships are very difficult. And I'm not just talking about dating, I'm also talking about friendships. So a lot of relationships come and go when you have lupus. And I know I saw some comments just in the last, with the last speaker about losing friends. And that is going to happen. Friends are going to come and go. People that you date are going to come and go. And I even see a lot of, about divorce later in life. The thing to keep in mind is that those people that go, they may not be able to handle what you're going through. And the important thing is that you're handling what you're going through. And the people that stick with you are the people that you're wanting with you. And also, I wanted to mention an experience that I have had with some friends of mine. I got very sick in 2013. I was about 24. I couldn't do anything. I was actually on short-term disability. I couldn't work. I couldn't go out. I couldn't do anything at 24. It was extremely difficult time for me. My friends were out living it up and they all left me. I lost all of my friends. About 3 years later, I saw them at a wedding and they apologized to me, explained that at that time in their life, they were immature, they did the wrong thing, and we made up, and to this day, we are best friends again. They are my biggest supporters now. They attend the walk with me every year. They donate to the cause. So it could just be about the timing in your life as well. They may not be ready for it when you're 24, but at 28, they may be able to be there for you. So I wanted to share that story with you. The next experience that I wanted to share with you was about family planning. I am married. I've been married for 10 years and I have 2 fur babies and 0 human babies. So we started exploring family planning when I was probably about 27. All of my friends have kids. I live in Illinois, and it's very common to start having kids like very young and right after you get married. Like we kind of live in the middle of nowhere. And so we were ready. But with having lupus, that's can be difficult with medications. So I actually sought out a physician that I had met through this very retreat. And we started going through the process of options. I highly recommend that instead of being scared, like I was through my entire 20s, that you do yourself a favor and just educate yourself. The more educated you are in the field, the better off you'll be, the more comfortable you'll be asking questions, and the sooner you can address any issues that might come up. There are so many options out there right now, so many more options than even I had a few years ago, that the outlooks are so much better today than they even were for me at 27. So while right now it's not in the cards for me, it still could be in a few years. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that for a moment, just to educate yourself, to not give up hope if that's a situation that you're in, and to seek out education, answers, and a good physician that you're comfortable with. And just to let you know that you're also not alone. There's a lot of us that are in the same boat. Okay, I'm going to check my timer because I don't want to go over. Okay, I have a couple minutes. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to just touch on really quick, since I have about a minute and a half, is work. So you've gone to college, you've worked really hard to get your degree. Well, then what do? You know, you're so tired, you're probably in pain. How are you gonna get through a 40-hour work week? Well, for starters, who says you have to work a 40-hour work week? There are so many different options out there. So that's one. Two, there are so many remote jobs. There's never been a better time to enter the workforce. So think about remote jobs, especially if you're just getting into college. Think about fields that you can do where you can work from home. It's amazing right now. So one mistake that I made in the workforce, I have a degree in biology. A mistake that I made that may not apply to everyone is disclosing my lupus diagnosis to my employer. I did this because I felt comfortable with my boss and I was going through treatments. This was leading up to my 2013 bout flare. And when I became very sick and I was on short-term disability, I came back and I was immediately let go. And that would not have happened had I not revealed my diagnosis. So I urge you to use caution in disclosing your diagnosis. Make sure it's something that you discuss with your spouse, if you have a spouse. Make sure it's something that you have discussed with HR, and make sure that your bases are covered. And I, to this day, regret not hiring a lawyer. But with having lupus, so many times we're not in the best frame of mind to be able to handle the battles that we could win because we're battling our health first. So that was the last thing that I wanted to touch on. Some words of wisdom from my experiences. Again, not everyone has had these experiences. Different fields could be different experiences as well. So I hope that my experiences have given you some food for thought. And if you have any questions, I am an open book, so feel free to ask in the Q&A. Thank you for letting me share and be here today.
Hi, I'm Shruti. Thank you all for letting me be here today. I'm really excited to be here. I was diagnosed at 16 and I think I didn't really understand the impact of lupus at first. You know, I went through the whole diagnosis thing where we've, I think, probably all been through that. They don't know what you have, they misdiagnose you. They told me it was stress and put me on antidepressants. I think a lot of us have been through that process, but it wasn't until I got to med school that I realized just how bad the lupus could get. And at the time, our rheumatology teacher was, our professor, he was trying to tell me, oh, you should come be a rheumatologist. You'd understand it all. You already know what it's like. You'll be able to empathize with your patients. And then I went into the worst flare I've ever had in my life. And he went from saying that to saying, you need to leave med school before the lupus kills you. You need to go take care of yourself before your career. And I think for me, like, this idea of not being able to complete the career that I really wanted was really heartbreaking. I felt like such a big part of my identity that I'd been working towards this thing for so long. But I did leave and I moved back in with my parents, and I ended up being at home for about 2 years. So there was 2 years where I was trying to get the lupus back under control. I was trying to get my body back into any kind of shape to be able to work a job. This was like before remote jobs were such a huge thing. And it was really hard because we've talked about this a lot, I think, over the last few speakers, but friends disappearing. I had a couple of people, my ride or die people, who stood by me and never left my side, but not all of them were actually in the same town as me. So a lot of the time it was just me kind of alone in my childhood bedroom, trying to figure out what the heck was I going to do with my life and how was I going to cope with this? And if I couldn't have a career that I thought I was going to have, then who was I and what was I going to do? And it took me a long time to realize that, your career doesn't define you. It is one piece of who you are, whatever your career may be, whether that's, a full-time 40-hour work week, If you're doing something cool on your own, like Kelly, lots of people have lots of different careers. And I think over the last 15 to 20 years, we've seen a lot of that growth. So I think the number one thing that I always tell people is, one, be kind to yourself. Adding that extra stress and pressure to yourself of like, I have to be this, I have to do that, it doesn't help you. Just a lot, like the world puts enough pressure on you. Take a minute and be kind to yourself and think about what is right for you now. And it may not be whatever you thought it was, and your career may turn out to be something totally different than what you thought it was going to be. And that is okay. It is okay to do that. When I got really sick, my mother was in total denial. She didn't want to accept that I had lupus. She didn't want to, accept that I wasn't going to have the career that I came from. And I don't know, what cultural communities everyone on the call comes from, but I come from an Indian background. What career you have and making your parents proud is a very big part of our cultural community. And so my mom didn't want me talking about my lupus in public. She didn't want people to know that I'd left med school. So that was really hard because I felt very isolated from a lot of my community, and I was feeling very lost. And so I think the second thing that really became big for me as I went through this lupus journey was understanding that your people may not always be the people in your life. And sometimes they are, and that is amazing. And I do have friends and family in my life now that are extremely supportive and understanding and always there when I need them. But I also found an online community. I have friends that I have never met who I have been really good friends with for over 10 years that I met online, and we have seen each other through so many things. So I think, when you think about finding your tribe, having those people in person is important, but your whole support network doesn't need to be living next door to you. They don't. Some of your best friends can be elsewhere in the world. One of my best friends is getting married this autumn in the wedding. I've never met her in person yet. So I think when you think about the people that are there for you and you think about how you build your friendships and you build your tribe, remember that there are a lot of people in the world who are going through what you're going through, who understand what you're going through, and can be there for you if you look for them. So I think for me, finding that online tribe, at the time it was Twitter, these days it's Instagram. I'll drop my handle for you later, but I think, finding those people is really important. Someone who can reflect back to you that you're not crazy, that other people are also experiencing this, because you're not. And I think sometimes the lupus can drive you crazy because it's like one day you're great, one day you're not. Sometimes you think oh, I can totally go out and party because I did it last weekend and I was okay. And then you do it again and suddenly you're in a crazy flare. And the lupus will psych you out sometimes. So I think it's important to have people that remind you that lupus is complicated and your limits can change from time to time, and that's okay. And I think that's probably my third lesson, is that learning your limits is so, so important. For me, I left med school and I was still going through this professional journey, and I ended up in consulting. And in consulting, you're on the road 4 days a week, you're working crazy hours. Was it a good option for me with my lupus? Absolutely not. But I was in denial and I was like, I'm going to do this. I can do it. It'll be okay. Y'all, it was not okay. It was not a good choice. But it took me a long time to figure that out. And I think, I was still trying to reach this goal that someone else had set for me, right? This is what you're supposed to do. This is who you're supposed to be. And it wasn't until I started thinking about the fact that I was miserable, that I was in pain all the time. I was sleeping all weekend. So I had no social life, because every weekend after a week of consulting, I would come home and sleep because my body needed that rest. And there was no work-life balance. It was not a good situation for me. And I think once I started to accept that, look, just because that was a great career option at one point, or it is a great career option for some people, it's not right for my body. And when I came to terms with that and I left consulting, I now work for a startup. I work from home. I work for a team that is super supportive. And Kelly, talked a little bit about disclosure at work, and I had never disclosed prior to my current job because I was so scared that that exactly what happened to Kelly was going to happen to me, that I wouldn't be treated fairly. My current job, though, I have incredibly supportive support structures in place. My boss is super understanding and supportive. He's a doctor, which I think helps a little bit. But they're really great about saying, like, hey, if you're flaring, like, take the day. It's not worth you pushing yourself to the point that you make yourself more ill. And I think finding a job that works for you, that you love, that lets you work in a way that is safe and healthy for your body is really, really important. And whether that means you're disclosing or it just means that you have a job with enough flexibility to let you do that, I think finding that path for yourself is an important thing that everyone needs to do. And it may not look the way that you think it's going to look, and that is okay. But find that happy place where you're able to have a job you love and you actually have a life, because your job isn't taking over every bit of energy that you've ever had. And I think the last thing that was really hard for me is I'm still single. Dating has been really hard for me with lupus personally. I struggled a lot. So I was like, I don't know, should I disclose it at the beginning? Because if you disclose it at the beginning, they don't know you yet and they don't know anything about you. And then it becomes like your one dominant feature. That's all they think about. And they're like, I don't want to sign up for this. I'm going to get out while I can. And so then I started trying to tell people later. And I was like, I'm just not going to tell them until after we've been out a few times, and hopefully, they know me, they kind of already like me enough to have gone on a few dates. And usually what that turned into was, well, now you should have told me sooner because I feel like there's a bait and switch. Chanel is saying dating with lupus is a whole additional panel. And I think you are so right. It's a whole nother can of worms. But I think what's important to remember is that everyone is on their own journey. And for a long time, I felt like I was being left behind by my friends. They were dating, then they were getting married and they had kids. And I was kind of just like chugging along, like still flipping through Bumble. But I think that what I've realized is, sometimes I still do that, but it stopped being my primary priority. And it's okay if it's your primary priority. But I think just coming to terms with the feeling of like who you are and happy with who you are, and knowing that people who aren't willing to go through the journey with you are not going to be good partners. And I think when I finally realized that all these people that were running away were probably never going to be a good partner anyway, I felt a lot better, because until then it felt very personal. It felt like I was like not good enough. There's something wrong with me, but there wasn't. It was just that these people didn't have the resilience or were not willing to commit to the kind of relationship that they are supportive and they are loving of someone no matter who you are and of all pieces of you. And I think when I realized that and I saw friends who have lupus go through healthy relationships, it made me realize that it's really important to find the right people. And if people can't be with you for who you are, then it's okay to move along. And I see that you're back on video, so I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay, well, we have so many great comments, but I don't know if you ladies have been able to read them. I hope that you have, because a lot of that, yes, I can totally relate to that. Someone had asked, I'm going to start asking questions. Y'all can answer, whoever wants to answer, unless there's something specific. There was a specific question for Kelly about you met your husband and how you told your husband. And I know Kristen is also married, so maybe Kristen, you both kind of share that.
Sure. So so I met my husband and I was 21 when I met him. So I met him when I was sick, but I didn't have my diagnosis. Like we were kind of in that in between, like figuring it out phase. I thought that that's what I had, but it wasn't official. So basically, I had been dating before that, and I had never told anyone before that I had dated that I was sick. I just always faked it. But when I met him, it felt very different when I met my husband. And I kind of just knew that I needed this man in my life. And I knew that I just had this feeling that I needed to tell him. So I told him on the first date. It was the first date. I told him, and I kind of told him probably too much. I told him, hey, I'm sick. I think I have lupus. I don't know though, but I'm pretty sure I do. And if I do, I have it forever. I might not be able to have babies. So if you want out, you better get out now. And he kind of just looked at me and he didn't say anything. And it felt like it was like for 10 minutes. I'm sure it wasn't that long. And he said, okay, well, we'll figure it out. And we've been married for 10 years. So I think it's when you find the right person, they will be there for you. And until then, the people along the way are the people that you don't need. That's just me personally.
What about you, Kristen?
I met my husband when I was 23 and we worked in the same building. So we kind of saw each other for a few months before we actually went out. And I was having kidney problems and like really bad kidney pains, and I was vomiting constantly, but I was like doing it in secret. So I was like constantly running to garbage cans and like in hiding to throw up. It was terrible. So yeah, anyways, I ended up having to I had my gallbladder removed, and then I also had a kidney biopsy. So I had this surgery and I was out of work for a little bit, and then I come back and him and I went out on a date. And while we were on our first date, like you as well, Kelly, he mentioned, he's like, oh, where were you? I was looking for you the last time. Oh, I was like, oh, I had surgery. And then I just blurred, because I have lupus and I'm like, you know, blah, 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 halfway broken. So he was like, wow, now I feel bad about complaining about anything. I was like, well, you're buying dinner. And then he was like, okay. And then the next time, and then at the end, I was like, oh, so do you want to get together again? And he was like, excuse my language, absolutely. And then the next time we met, he's like, he looked it up, lupus. And then I thought, I'm gonna marry this guy someday. 7 years later, we got married.
Oh, what great stories. I think that is a good indication of the right person, man, woman, whatever is out there for you. And if you meet somebody who doesn't understand or isn't interested, that's not the right person for you. So yeah, so I think if anybody has any other questions, I think somebody had said they wanted to say something, or so you feel free to unmute yourself now if you want to ask a question or say something or make a comment to any of our presenters. I'll let you do that right now.
Are we able, my name is Julian. Are we able to look back at this recording at all?
Yeah, everything today was recorded, and we have a YouTube channel that we'll load it to, and the other chapters that are involved today will also do that. So you'll get information about when the recording has been uploaded.
I was just gonna say too, I'm glad I went today. I overslept and stuff. I've only been getting like 4 hours of sleep the last couple of days, and I wasn't gonna go today, but I'm I'm glad I went. That's all. Thank you.
We're glad you came, Julie.
Oh,
Go ahead, Chanel.
I was gonna say something to the dating part of it. I'm partnered, I'm not married, but I will say I'd spent a long time dating. And I think the lens when we got lupus, or when I got lupus, began to look at it like I have this deficit, as opposed to like I'm a person dating. And I think that like the more we pull back, and this is for, I have friends that have other chronic illnesses, and we all kind of talk about it, where it's like there's a part of me, I'll speak for myself, that felt like I had to earn some guy's attraction to hope that he was gonna love me, even though I had this thing. And I think that that lens in dating makes dating really, really hard, because it's almost a space of desperation. At least I'm talking for myself. I felt like I was a little desperate, like I'm trying to convince him that I'm so amazing, all this, and that I have this thing. And instead of me going, do I like you as a person? Are you somebody that I'd want to be with? Do you show me that you're a kind of person that shows up? Like all those things that I need for a relationship matter more than whether I've told them I have lupus, like I'm auditioning you, and it's not me trying to audition for this role that I'm hoping this person picks me for. So I think that just trying to, like, while it is definitely a big part of our life, I think that in my presentation, that's why I ended with the whole, I like cookies and Stranger Things. Like we're still people, and we still are whole people that are worthy of all of the good things that come to life: partners, careers, fun. So just that lens is, I want to say, I feel like that's what led me to find my partner. And it wasn't until I shifted that lens where I'm like, I'm auditioning you. That helped a lot for me.
Go ahead, Rachel.
I know my personal experience was right around the time that I got diagnosed, there was a guy who was interested in me. I didn't know about him. And then I ended up severely sick, and he like doubled his efforts. He was like, oh my gosh, I almost lost this girl. I really, really like her. Let me like almost smother her with affection. And I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And that was a really good friend that I lost. I had mentioned it in the chat. The really good friend that I had lost at that time, because he couldn't handle me needing time to figure out what was going on. And so he couldn't handle it, and our friendship was severely hurt. And for a while, I was entirely blocked from him. I think I still am, actually. And so it put me off on dating for the longest time because of his reaction, but I'm finally back to where I want somebody. I want that connection with somebody.
And it will come, Rachel. It will come, sweetie. Anything else as we're wrapping up? Any comments or questions? Okay, well, I want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your personal story and providing some tips and inspiration to the women that are on here today. We really appreciate it. We need more kinds of connections like this, and since COVID, it's been harder to make those connections, I think. And so we're so glad that you could all be here today, and you're getting lots of people thanking you. And I don't know if you've all looked in the chat, but there are people putting their Instagram handle and some other information there. So if you all want to stay in touch, feel free to do that. We'll kind of let you scroll through there. And just to wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that these have been recorded. So we will send everyone an email once they have been uploaded so that you can watch them again or share them with people that you know that have lupus. And we will be sending you an evaluation after this is over, so you can let us know what you liked, what you learned, and it will really help us in our future programming. So thank you all for being here. Thank you everybody for all your comments and questions. You've all been very interactive and involved today, so we appreciate it. Thanks again to Kristen and Shruti and Chanel and Kelly for sharing their story. And we hope to see you guys at another program. Thank you very much. Have a good day.